Fact or Fiction Fridays. So we're gonna tell a story. It could be either a true story or a false, fact or fiction. We're just gonna go through the story and then we'll reveal at the end. So we're gonna get started.
All right, so this story is going to be about an American politician, and this story is going to tell about how a person can do a 180-degree turn in a matter of years. So let's go ahead and get started.
All right. So for this story, we're gonna call our main character John, just for the sake of the story. His name is gonna be John.
That's a good name.
He was born in the 1950s. Uh, as we mentioned, he's American, so this story takes place in America. He was raised by his mom and dad, both real hardworking. His dad was a factory worker, and his mom managed a store, so store manager. Um, John played basketball in high school. He would go to college on a basketball scholarship, and he did receive his bachelor's in accounting while playing basketball in college. When he graduated, he would move away from home. Would take several jobs in several different cities doing accounting work.
All right, so by this time it's in the 80s, and John's about 30 years old. So he gets married and moves back home to his hometown. He's headed there and he starts a cable company. Um, he was a general manager there and ended up moving up to being vice president. And at that time, he was making about $400,000 a year.
Yeah. So then we go toward the 90s, so the early 90s. He's going back to school at this point in his life, and he's working on an executive MBA program. He also starts to kind of dabble in politics around this time. And since he was working at the cable company, he uses connections to host a television show for his area. And he would have people call in with their questions or concerns, and he would, have discussions on air about what was going on. So that was kind of the first little bit of political things that he would do. And he started getting awards for his work. He got a young leadership award and a role model award, and so he was starting to make a name for himself in his community at that time.
All right, so let's fast forward just a tad bit to about the early 2000s. Our guy John decides he wants to run for mayor. So he enters the race the very last day that he can qualify to do so. And shortly after he did win, he got about 59% of the votes and he became mayor and quickly began to work and actually was doing good, was being real positive about it, make some positive changes around his city that he was mayor of. Well, he did add about 400,000, not 400,000, but 4,000 jobs and pulled his city's poverty rate among other accomplishments.
Yeah. So around this time, there was a threat of a devastating There was a threat of a devastating natural disaster heading towards the city. And luckily for him, the threat missed the city. It didn't actually go through his city. And so the following year, there was another threat. So, like, it was a seasonal type thing, and then it came around again next year. So, the previous year, threat still fresh. He felt that, hey, it probably will pass us again. And he felt that he can take care of his people. And he pretty much ignored the government's offers to help. Like, hey, we see this might be happening. Let's get ahead of this thing. And he was like, oh, no, we're good, pretty much. So this time, however, it was a very disastrous natural disaster. And this impacted 80% of his city. So a very large amount of people were affected by this. And then he publicly criticized the government for not helping. But as we said, he initially denied their help because he didn't really feel like it was going to be a big deal. And so it was kind of weird for him to then, say, "Oh, you're not helping us." That's pretty much what happened with that.
All right, so fast forward just a tad bit more. John is up for re-election. John went on to run again for mayor, even though he made quite a few racist comments throughout the re-election process.
Mm-hmm.
So after doing so, after all this, I guess everybody forgave him apparently, and he was reelected for mayor. That was just the beginning of his scandal. Start turning, spiraling downhill for him. So he was being investigated for emails and found out that he had deleted about 5,000 emails after it was all recovered. Um, Also, lots of people hired by the mayor were being charged with kickback schemes. Also, using money to fund outings with John as well.
John also brought a very popular hardware store to the city. There was a lot of land up for sale, and he gave it to him cheap um, because he wanted them to exclusively use his son's company, which was a granite countertop business. So he brought this big company in, gave him this land for really cheap in exchange for them to use his son's business exclusively. So this exchange later got him in trouble. He was eventually indicted on 21 charges, including wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and false tax returns. So he goes from the mayor to now doing, criminal activity. And all of this was happening like while he was still the mayor. Um, all of this stuff that he was charged with happened while he was the mayor. He was convicted on 20 of 21 counts after he pleaded not guilty. He was the first mayor of his city to be charged with corruption. And so in 2014, so this was after he wasn't the mayor anymore, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his crimes.
All right, so our story would have ended with him in prison, but this day and age right now, with coronavirus, due to the whole pandemic of the whole world being on the coronavirus, John was recently released from prison. So now he's living it up at home with his family.
Yeah. So, he was sentenced to 10 years, and so he didn't end up serving his whole time. He got out about 4 years early. Last year he got out. And so that's the end of our story. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a true story, or do you think that we made it all up? So, if you want to comment, go ahead and leave a comment below and tell us what you think. So we'll wait, for you to figure out, if you think this is true or false.
All right.
Go ahead and make up your mind.
We'll put a few hints on the screen for you. Yep. All right, so this story is true.
It's true.
This was a story of Ray Nagin, the 60th mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana. The natural disaster that we were speaking about took place was the infamous Hurricane Katrina that brought devastation to the whole city. Now Ray lives at home down in Texas.
Yeah, he moved from New Orleans and now lives in Texas with his family. Now that he's out of prison.
All right, well, tell us what you think about the story. Like, share, subscribe. We would like to see what your comments.
Yeah, and so this is our second time doing this, and we're trying to work everything out. I know you guys might see us looking to the side. We do have plans to not have to do that for our future videos. We're working hard. Brandon's, editing things. He's doing a good job. So the videos quality and everything will get better. Just bear with us, guys. But we do appreciate anyone that subscribed to our channel. We appreciate it, and we're gonna keep these coming Fridays for you. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.